So how does a nation go from its absolute lowest point, I'm talking total economic collapse, to becoming the most powerful country on the planet, all in less than 20 years? It's an incredible story, really. One of desperation, sheer innovation, and of course, total war. Let's dive in and see how these crises literally forged a superpower. Our story really kicks off right here. This is the New York Stock Exchange, the absolute engine of American capitalism. You know, for a whole decade, this place was the symbol of limitless wealth, of making it big. But it's also the exact spot where that dream came to a screeching, crashing halt, kicking off the nation's worst economic disaster ever, the Great Depression.
Okay, so before the bust, there was the boom. And to really get a handle on the collapse, you've got to understand what came before it, the Roaring '20s. We're talking about a decade of just dizzying highs that, well, set the stage for some truly devastating lows.
The 1920s were just, a decade of wild contradictions. I mean, on the surface, you had the whole Roaring '20s thing going on. Jazz, flappers, a stock market that literally only seemed to go up. But bubbling right underneath all that? Prohibition. Alcohol was banned, which ironically just fueled the rise of super powerful gangsters like Al Capone. All this created this frenzy of speculation. And when I say everyone was getting in on it, I mean everyone, from huge investors like Joseph Kennedy all the way down to office boys and shoe shiners. They were all pouring money, a lot of it borrowed, into the market. It really felt like a gold rush that was just never going to end.
But all parties have to end, right? And this one ended suddenly and catastrophically. In October 1929, that massive bubble just burst. It started on a day we now call Black Thursday, when the market took a massive plunge. But by Black Tuesday, it was in a total, complete freefall. People's life savings? Gone. Just vanished in an instant. The financial engine of the whole country had completely seized up.
So, the crash triggers the Great Depression, and the human cost, well, it was just staggering. At the very peak of the crisis, what percentage of the American workforce do you think was unemployed? A full 25%. Think about that. 1 out of every 4 workers had no job and absolutely no prospects.
And this wasn't just a statistic on a chart, you know? This was a daily crisis of survival. Entire fortunes vanished, literally overnight. This famous image right here of a once wealthy broker trying to sell his luxury car for $100, it just perfectly captures the sheer desperation. For millions of people, everything was gone. Their homes, their savings, and maybe worst of all, their dignity.
So, into all this chaos steps a new leader, Franklin D. Roosevelt, or FDR. He gets elected in a total landslide with a promise of a New Deal for the American people. This was a bold, incredibly ambitious plan to fight the Depression head-on.
Now, FDR's strategy wasn't just a random collection of programs. No, it was a really methodical 3-pronged attack on the crisis. You can see the core steps right here. Step 1, stop the financial panic. That meant restoring people's trust in the banks. Step 2, create jobs for the millions who were unemployed. And finally, Step 3, build a permanent social safety net so a disaster of this magnitude could never, ever cripple the country again.
And he put this plan into action fast. The Emergency Banking Act helped stabilize the whole financial system. Then you had programs like the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, which put millions of young men to work. And, of course, these massive infrastructure projects like the Grand Coulee Dam, which literally started to reshape the country's landscape. Now, let's be clear, the New Deal didn't end the Depression, but what it did was crucial. It stopped the bleeding, it started to rebuild America's confidence, and, kind of accidentally, it began building the massive industrial foundation that would very soon be needed for war.
So, the New Deal started to heal the nation, but like I said, it wasn't the thing that finally ended the Depression. So what did? Well, it was the eruption of another, even bigger global crisis, World War II. This conflict would turn out to be the unexpected catalyst that transformed America's economy into a truly unstoppable war machine.
For years, America tried to stay out of it, officially neutral. But that all changed on December 7, 1941, the surprise attack on the naval base at Pearl Harbor. It was a profound national trauma. But it also did something else. It united the country overnight and fully awakened its sleeping industrial power for one single purpose: victory.
And the speed of this mobilization, it was just breathtaking. American factories that had been silent for years suddenly roared back to life with this incredible singular purpose. I mean, the velocity was unbelievable. Just try to wrap your head around this. By 1944, a brand new military plane was rolling off an assembly line every 5 minutes.
And it wasn't just planes, not even close. As you can see from this chart, the scale of production was just staggering across the board. Just look at these numbers. We're talking over 86,000 tanks, more than 140 aircraft carriers, and 41 times billion rounds of ammunition. America was literally becoming the arsenal of democracy, supplying not just its own forces, but its allies all over the world.
And right here, this is the core strategic advantage. The sheer volume of American production was just overwhelming. The United States, by itself, produced twice as many weapons as Germany and Japan put together. It was an industrial tsunami that the Axis powers simply had no way of matching.
But hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Listen to this. At the Tehran Conference in 1943, the Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, who was not exactly a fan of capitalism, mind you, he raised a toast. He toasted to American production, saying that without which this war would have been lost. I mean, that's a crystal clear admission from a major rival that U.S. industry was the deciding factor.
So America's incredible industrial might helps lead the Allies to victory. But the end of the war brought a new and way more complex world into focus, and it was a world that America would now be expected to lead.
The war in Europe was over, but Japan was still fighting fiercely. To avoid what would have been an incredibly bloody invasion, President Truman made a fateful decision. On August 6, 1945, a single American plane dropped a terrifying new kind of weapon on the city of Hiroshima. And just like that, the world entered the atomic age.
The devastation. It was unlike anything in human history. The bomb and its after effects would ultimately claim an estimated 140,000 lives, just in Hiroshima. After a second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, Japan finally surrendered. World War II was over.
So think about it. Its economy was booming, its enemies were defeated, and now it had exclusive possession of the atomic bomb. America's new status was undeniable. It had become the world's first true superpower, a nation that could project its power and its influence to literally every corner of the globe.
But this incredible victory didn't bring lasting peace. Not at all. The war left two giants standing, the United States and its wartime ally, the Soviet Union. And almost immediately, these two former allies became bitter rivals in a totally new kind of global struggle, an ideological fight between capitalism and communism that we now call the Cold War.
That American monopoly on atomic power, and the sense of total security that came with it, was incredibly short-lived. Because in 1949, the world was absolutely shocked to learn that the Soviets had successfully tested their own atomic bomb. The American monopoly was over. A terrifying new nuclear arms race had begun.
And so here we are, full circle. Born from the ashes of the Great Depression and forged in the fires of World War II, America had risen to become a global superpower. But all this new power came with a very heavy burden and a chilling new reality, which leaves us with one final, kind of haunting question. America had become a superpower, for sure, but was the world any safer?